Hi everybody, welcome back to Sprueverse, my scale model universe. People of Earth, welcome to a brand new build. And today on the bench we have got this thing of beauty. It is the Mars Ascent Vehicle, MAV, from Fantastic Plastic. This is in 1/72 scale, and of course it's from the motion picture The Martian, starring Matt Damon, and directed by Ridley Scott. Now, this came out in 2015, and I loved this production. I thought it was terrific. I loved the story. I loved everything about it. Now, there's a lot of you out there are going to be rolling your eyes and going, yeah, that sucked or whatever. But I don't know. For me personally, I thought it was a great film. And it's very rare that you can find vehicles from films like that. They just don't have any ancillary opportunities to go out and build stuff like that. So unless it's a what I call a small batch manufacturer, garage kits for those of you out there who want to call them garage kits, or someone who's going to sit at their computer, design these CAD files and get an STL out there, and they may well be out there. I'm not aware of it, but I'm sure that they're out there. I just didn't find them. I found this, and I thought, why not? Let's give it a try. You know. Now, candidly, I am hungering for a little sprue, so we're going to be doing a little more spruage at the end of the year. As we get closer to Christmas, I am going to start the Polar Lights 1/350 scale refit. It's going to be a huge build through Christmas and into the new year. That's a big thing that's coming. And I've got Randy Cooper's Sandcrawler studio scale, and that's coming too. So I've got a little bit of resin, a little bit of good old-fashioned sprue coming down the pike. But let's dive into this, and let's see what we got. Not a huge box, actually. It came well packed. I have, for the purposes of full disclosure, I have removed a lot of the packing material so that we can dive right in. So we've got a lot of flash that we've got to clean up here. These parts are quite sturdy. These look like these are appliques to the sides of the Ascent module, I guess where the fuel tanks are, so we'll see. We'll take a look at those in a second. Lots of flash on this, and of course the top of the craft, and so that all has to be removed. That looks pretty good. This looks like the engine compartment where the bells are going to go for the engines, and that looks pretty good. And then of course this will have to be cleaned out, and this is the entrance and exit where the ladder went, if you recall from the film. We have a bag of 3D printed parts here we'll get to in just a second. More of the side appliques here. Here is the sides of the ship. There are 3 parts to this, and if I can get you a little closer here just to show you, very crisp. I think this is a very, very nice print. I should say mold, excuse me, it's not a print. This is a resin cast piece. They look pretty good. There's 3 of them. I don't see any bubbles or chips. A little bit of cleanup to do, as you can see in these corners, but that's very common for these kinds of kits. Here's the top, and now you can build this 2 ways. The first way is obviously with this nose cone on, and the second way is when I can't. Well, his name was. Hang on, I had this just a second ago. If you want to build this with Watney, I should remember that, shouldn't I? Because it used to be a great beer in England, Watney's Pale Ale. I don't know if that's why it was called Watney, but anyway, I digress. So you can either build this with Watney's escape vehicle version. If you recall, at the end of the movie, he had to lighten up the whole thing so he could take off and rendezvous with the rescue ship. In that case, this had a massive tarp over it, which would be really fun to do a version like that. I don't think that's the way I'm going to display mine, but nonetheless, they give you the opportunity to either have this with the hatch off, in which case you would display it with that hatch piece on the surface with all the other junk around it. That'd be a really cool way to do it, actually, and I think a fun way to do it for Wonderfest, but I don't know. Maybe this might even be a Wonderfest thing that I can take. I don't know. We'll see. It certainly is compact enough. We'll decide that at the end of the build. But anyway, here is the top of the rescue capsule, looking very, very similar to the NASA version of the ships that we know and recognize. So a lot of science, credible science, has gone into this, obviously. Diving back into the box here, here's the base that will obviously will connect the three sides of our ship to, and these are tops of the engine bells. That's pretty obvious. And then, of course, in the bottom of the box here is a piece of metal rod. I suspect this is for the hinges in case you want to be able to manipulate the landing gears. I won't be doing that. I will be putting them in a locked position, as I always do. I don't play with my models like toys, so I'm not interested in that. But, you know, that's taking nothing away from people who do. 3D printed parts. Here are the engine cones. And then, so they look pretty good, nice and crisp. There looks to be some more 3D parts here, perhaps part of the exterior sides of the ship, I suspect. We'll put those down for a second, and of course we've got a nice ladder. We've got some other appliques. We've got some landing feet. Here is the Watney hatch that I talked about. Let's show you that close up. It's nice and clean. That's the bottom of it, and that's the top. This is obviously a 3D printed part, so there's a little bit of sanding and painting to do there, but I think you could clean that up. A couple of coats of the Duplo filler primer should get rid of any of those lines. They're not that deep, but there's some nice detail in that if you want to go down that road. That's kind of cool. And then, of course, some feet, 3 of those, very crisp, very clean, and some struts and other appliques. So it's all here, and it's all looking quite good. Let me show you the decals. They are here. Here they are. We've got the name of the rocket here. We've got some very cool NASA Imagine signage. So the production team did a really nice job with that. We've got hydrazine logos and some warning signs for around the skirt and the crew module. You've got some hatches that you can put on as decals. You've got some NASA and American flags. And if these are not crisp enough, I've still got spares from my Discovery space shuttle build, so I can use a lot of those on this model. That'll be fun. Lots of numbers that appear on the landing legs, and lots of white numbers and black numbers that appear around the landing rings. And then, of course, on the round plate on the side of the hydrazine tanks, you've got these wonderful chemical makeup signs that are going to really add some detail to it. And over here, you've got some markings for around the main hatch that look pretty good. Pretty good. I can get you a little closer so you can see those. Now, obviously, these are on a quality sheet of, for decals, but they're one complete piece, so they all are going to have to be cut into individual pieces. If you've never used a sheet like this that doesn't have individually cut, we've gone through them a bunch of times on the various builds. But it is important to remind a lot of the lesser, the more moderate builders that these sheets, you do have to cut these into individual pieces, and it can be a little tricky, so take your time. Instructions. Hello, instructions. And let's have a look at the instructions together. A little brief on the mention of the 2015 movie, and calling it, which I really like, is a highly plausible craft for ferrying 6 astronauts from the Martian surface into low orbit. Very cool. The craft consists of a descent module, which also serves as a launching pad during the takeoff, which we saw in the film quite prominently. A primary ascent stage, a smaller secondary ascent stage, and of course the manned capsule itself, which is this piece here at the top. And the design, it says, was based on actual NASA concepts for a manned mission to Mars in the coming decades. So that's very cool that they went down that direction. And I appreciate that. A little bit of information about working with resin. You know, we've talked about that before. If you're new to resin, remember everything should be washed in warm water with a little bit of Dawn soap, something that can clean off any of the release agent that might be left on the parts. You want to do that. Even though I do that and make sure everything's thoroughly dry and sanded after I've cleaned everything up and got all the flash off of it, I have been using Dupacolor's paint adhesion spray. You can get it at any automotive store. You can get it online, but you spray it on, you wait a few minutes, and then you paint whatever you're painting, and it really does help bite and bond that paint to the surface, and so I've had a lot of good luck with that. A couple of the parts in this box I've noticed are a little warped, so we're going to have to put them in warm water and straighten them out. Be very careful. No boiling water, just warm water, and you should be able to straighten these out. And then with assembly, it wants you to start obviously at the very bottom in the descent stage. So putting on the various parts that create the engine section. And it wants you to build that first before you go on to getting the struts and the feet glued on. Now some of this we're going to be able to pre-assemble and glue. Some of the parts we'll have to paint and do a little bit of dry brushing and detailing to before we actually glue them, because otherwise it's going to be very difficult to do that afterwards. Here are the feet again. With some of the detail parts. The brass rod, as I suspected, is for the hinges, and then there are these rods here. They refer to them as rods, and I notice they're made out of 3D printed resin, and they've warped a little bit, but that's okay. We can clean those up, and you can have this either in the open position or the closed position. I'm going to be in the open position, in the landed position, because I think it's certainly more dramatic for display purposes. And then, of course, going on to show you how the actual sides of the ship are connected together. It does caution you and says if there's any warpage, you can obviously, as I said, soften it with warm water and get everything back together. So that's nice of them to tell you that. Here it looks in a relatively finished kind of state. And then it gives you the opportunity to say, hey, you're building the Watney convertible. If not, don't glue this part on. You know, you're going to get your tarp and you're going to leave this on the surface, because that's where that cap was left, right? If we recall. Showing you here how these exterior pieces here connect to the ship, so that's good. And then the finale here is showing you a few of those smaller detailed bits that they were kind enough to give us in the 3D printed bag. And then, of course, it goes on to painting and decal placement. And so the net result is you end up with something that looks a little like this, okay? Which I have a rendering of, and that rendering is obviously looking like that. Now there's some slight differences to this rendering of the ship, which I suspect is perhaps even a NASA version of this. As you can see, one of the ports is a window. It's a clear window, so that might be fun to actually to do that. Is to have one of them open and perhaps do some detail inside. I don't know. You know, it's all as I fancy it, and then as we go along, we're going to sort of think about the base that this is going to be on, which will be a little bit of a Martian landscape. I think that's the right way to display this, and we should have a pretty good looking ship. So to start, I have to clean up all of this flash, and I'm noticing as I'm looking at this piece that there's just a little bit of cleanup here because there's a seam I'm noticing that it's going to sit here like this. Well, you can't see that, so what's the point? Isn't stupid me? I apologize. It's going to sit like this, so we've got a little bit of cleanup to do, so that these parts can connect. There's a lot of roughness here, and then we'll make sure everything kind of fits. And then once everything fits, it's going to get a warm bath, a degreasing bath, get all of this release agent off, get them all nice and clean, and then we can start the assembly process and see what we've got. Okay, so this should be a fun build. It's nice that it fits on the veg. So let's see how we do. Okay. So I've done an initial cleanup of everything, and I sort of wanted to take stock of where we are for the build, because sometimes I worry that I get too far ahead of it and you don't see enough of the build, and then sometimes you see too much of the build. So I don't know where the middle ground is here, but you'll tell me when you're bored or I'm in, not going in the right direction, because the one thing I can guarantee you about my subscribers is they're not shy. Anyway, so I have been cleaning up the parts, and I think I've made my first mistake, but it's very fixable, so I'm not worried. And that is that in this piece, on two of these pieces, actually three of these pieces, let me show you a minute closer. These three pieces, I removed what I thought was flashing, and it was actually a half circle. So what I'm going to have to do is get a little piece of card and cut a half circle to go in here and clean that up, and that should be fine. I've been smoothing down the sides here to the best of my ability. I've got a little bit of puttying to do because I have gingerly taped together the sort of the main section of the ship, just to sort of see if I had any super fit issues. And what I'm noticing is these pieces do sit on the sides here quite nicely, but they are exposed on both sides. You're gonna see this side. So because of that, I want to make sure that they're smooth enough. Now I've got a little bit of pits and things like that I'll clean up with a little bit of my Bondo surface putty and they'll come together quite nicely. So that was boo-boo number one, but it's okay. It's not the end of the world. I'm trying to figure out, and I'm going to take another look at the movie before I do anything, but I believe that these sections here are clear. They should be glass. So the question is do I cut those out and add some glass in there? I don't know. I'm going to take a look. This rib is not a rib that I thought in the beginning. And of course, when I showed you this the first time, I had the bloody thing upside down, which is typical for Phil Siegel. But anyway, that's okay. We shall prevail. It sits on top, and I don't have this together correctly yet. So, meaning that I've got a little gappage going on here, right here. I can clean that up with a little bit of sandpaper, so that I can clean that up. And that's okay. Now there should be a gap there because it technically separates from the rest of the ship. So I do need to clean that up and make sure it's clean. What I may have to do is go through with some of my 0.10010 card, plastic card, and just give that a nice clean edge. I don't know. We'll have to take a look. And then of course, I have got my little nose cone nose there. There she blows. She sits up in there nicely. So that's good. And for those of you who are wondering, the Watney version is the version that sort of sits like, well, it wouldn't sit like that. It's going to sit open or in some display version of your choosing, but we're not going down that road. We're going to seal it up and we're going to do that to it. So that's looking pretty good. So I've just got some I've got a little more gappage cleaning to do. Now there is a funkiness to this build, and that is this plate. Now this plate, according to my dear friends at Fantastic Plastic, has a ledge. There's a ledge. So when the ship sits on it, you have a little bit of a ledge like that. You see? So then the question is, if that is true, this needs some kind of a surface to it, and I don't know what I'm going to do there. I might actually do one of my famous medical tape things and give it a surface, so it appears to have a surface, because the rest of it, this is the undercarriage with the engines, has this frame that goes to it, and that frame creates the legs, so the legs sit on. Now here are my legs, and I've noticed that they do need a little bit of help. So I'm going to go at, I've been going around and just doing, there's a lot of this, and this is just the little trees that were used to attach it to the build plate, and they should come off quite nicely, and they definitely will come off with a little bit of sandpaper. They're super brittle, but it's just going around and making sure that you do get them all, and then you can go to town on this. As you can see, the surface here is a little rough, but we just, with just a little sanding stick, and it just takes it right off. So you do have to be a little careful that you don't go too crazy, because you'll take off a lot of material very quickly with resin. It can be very soft. So anyway, what I've got to do now is I've got I've got to make up 3 of these sets that attach to the descent stage. So I need 1 of these, and then I need 2 of these pieces, and everything gets attached with this piece of brass rod that goes through the whole thing, like that. So I've got to figure out direction, and I've got to figure out you know, just sort of clean these up, and then it says, you know, I mean, you can assemble these, and then they've all got to be painted and dry brushed and everything else. You can go to the races, but a lot of fun. Now, some of these parts will be in white, and some of these parts will be in steel, and we'll have some washes on them. I may take a little creative license with my ship, because I found in the past that sometimes colors that are called out, and you know, you look at a frame grab from a film, and you're going, I don't know, that's lights, that's studio lighting, that's gels, you know, what is it? And of course, everybody, as they should, have an opinion on what color things are. So I'm noticing there's what possibly is a locator pin here. So I want to show you this because I've got them on all 3 of my pieces, and there's nothing to help you with this here on the directions. They're a little crude, so a little bit of guesswork going on here. But I do know that this is going to sit. It's going to sit in this well somehow. I'm not quite sure how it's going to sit in there yet, but it's going to sit in there. And so that's what we're working on now. We're going to get these pieces sort of cleaned up and in the right direction. And I need to make 3 of those. So that's what I'm working on now. I don't think there's anything else I wanted to share. I do have a lot of, I've got some warpage here that I'm going to have to deal with. Some of these parts, as you can see, have warped. They should be straight, so they're going to have to go into a little bit of warm water, and then when you get them on the bench or get them somewhere and just hold them for a few seconds, and they should straighten right out. I've got the same problem with some of these rods that are quite crude, but should be okay. You can see right there how much of a warp I've got there. So, and I'm going to have to be super careful, because if I go too far with these, I'm liable to snap something. So I'm going to right now orient myself and figure out where everything goes, how it all goes together. Now that I know I've got everything is here, I haven't lost anything, which is it's very typical of me. So I'm going to just sort of play with these for a little bit and get myself oriented, and we'll see how they're supposed to go together. But I wanted to show you this stage because otherwise we just get too far ahead of ourselves, and there's some complications here. But what I am excited about is there's a lot of detail on this to have some fun with. So that should be good, and then we'll put some washes on it, and I think it'll look good on its stand, and I think it'll look good in a Martian landscape. So we've got something that's fun here. But again, if you've never worked with resin before, these kits can be a little frustrating because there's an awful lot of cleanup to do. I obviously through the magic of cutting these shows together, you don't get to see the mask, the dust, and the huffing and kerfuffing that goes on. And then you've got to clean it. Then you've got to clean it all up, and the dust gets everywhere. So if you can do this outside, I would highly recommend you do. If you've got a shop like I do, and you've got a shop vac, a good one, then as long as you're protected and you're not breathing this stuff, you can work indoors. And the other thing I would also say is, don't forget to change out your blades. They'll get dull on you very quickly, and if they get dull on you, you're going to do some really cool things like I do, and I want you to avoid. It's like slipping and cutting yourself because it's not sharp enough, or it's not cutting through this correctly, and it should, because if it doesn't cut like butter, you need a sharp blade, because it should cut like butter. Resin is very soft. Okay, so there you have it. I'm going to just continue to keep cleaning up, and then we will start to orient the landing gears for the 3 legs and see what that looks like. So we've made some progress. I wanted to update you on where I am with the actual landing gear section of this ship. Because that's what I'm concentrating on right now. I have been working on all of the various different armatures that make up part of the landing feet. And now, curiously enough, it says in the instructions that the brass rod that you need for this is not included, but it was. So I guess they just decided to go ahead and throw in the brass rod and hook us up. Not without some challenges here, because I had a little breakage. Now, you can most certainly call Fantastic Plastic. They ask you to do that if you have any lost or damaged parts, and I'm sure they'll replace them for shipping and handling. I don't know. I'm not going to, because what I've noticed in watching some frame grabs from the actual film is that these armatures here are a lot beefier than is here. So what I'm going to try and do is, I've got some pieces in my jeweler's box. I've got old watch parts, and I think I've got some armature parts that look pretty close to what it looks like on the film. These are quite beefy down here. They're not just pins. So I'm going to try and find something that I can cover them with. I'm going to need 6 of those, but I think I can find something, or at least in my spares box, to cover these sides here. They need to be more of a much more of a plate than just this pin. So I want to do something there just to kind of beef that up. And if I can't find anything, I'll fashion something out of some card and put it over there, just so that it's a little beefier. They went together relatively well. I had all I've had to do is do a little bit of cleanup on these, but they look pretty good now. Nothing is glued, obviously. Everything you see here is just all loosely fit together. Because I haven't had it, because I'm going to do all 3 before I do anything else, and then I will break this down and then get some primer on everything. But the only other thing I have to do is you need these pieces right here. You need 3 of these, and what these are going to do, these pieces right here, is they're going to attach just under here. And what they're going to allow you to do is get these armatures, and there's 6 of these, to attach down here, and then connect to this little pin right here. And that will complete the lower leg, as far as I can tell. Now, I wanted to show you that that, but I also wanted to show you. I'm going to gingerly turn this over. Now I'm going to be losing my pins here, which is okay. I just don't want to lose them. But when I turn this over, I've got all of the struts in, and they're permanent. I'll just remove the legs for getting this all kind of primed up. It's going to be a little tricky to get the airbrush in there, but I didn't want to have to deal with pre-painted parts that I dropped in here, because this is quite a fiddly stage. And then you've got the hydrazine tanks, and there are 6 of these, and they drop into these little sections right here like this, and then there's some really nice decals for the side. And what I'll do is I will pre-paint and detail and dry brush all of those, so those are ready to go, and then I'll just drop them in after I've painted everything else. And then you've got 3 of these engine bells, and they're going to drop down into these sections right here, and I will pre-paint those and get those all cleaned up and detailed as well. Now and I've got, which might be a lot of fun, and I think it's the same scale, I've got some leftover decals from my Discovery, from my aftermarket Discovery, that I can put on this ship that could be a lot of fun. Things like airlock signs that they don't give you, and also some caution signs around the engine bells. So that might be a lot of fun, and that would complete the bottom of here. So there's a lot more detail than you actually think. It's a lot of fun, and I think it's really going to be impressive when it finally sits on its Martian landscape. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and get the 3 legs all sort of pre-fitted and ready to go. Get a coat of primer on this, and I think that will probably most likely do it for this episode. And we'll get into paint and decals and a final reveal on the next episode, I think. So anyway, I wanted to show you that. I had a little bit of breakage, but it isn't anything I can't repair. And so I'll go and do that with a little bit of epoxy sculpt. I'm not going to reach out to Fantastic Plastic and ask them to send me new parts. I could probably get STL files, but I'm sure they wouldn't send me those. But I'm okay. It's going to be fine, and we'll clean all this up before we go to final paint anyway. But it's quite nice. It's quite nice, and I think it's going to look quite dramatic. So anyway, let me plow on here. Okay. So I was hoping that in this segment we would have had everything primed up, but I ran into some bumps in the road, as it were, and so I wanted to share that with you, because if you're going to build this model, you may run into those problems as well, or you may have no issues at all, and in which case this will be a complete waste of your time. However, I have got the body put together. It feels quite bulky, actually, to be honest with you. And curiously enough, a lot of the bulk is coming from these sections right here, because they're solid cast. A couple of observations that I've just made and realized is I'm pretty sure, can't prove it, but I'm pretty sure this was a 3D print, and then they went ahead and used it as a mold to make resin molds on it, because when I look at some of the pieces, I could see striations in there where the lines were the grooves. The resin actually picked it up. So if I was a betting man, I'd say that was going on. Now, lots of things did not go together very well. I really had to really force it into submission here. Used a lot of 5-minute epoxy and some clamps. I had some serious seam lines that I'm getting rid of by putting some card over it. And the ones that aren't seamed, I'm leaving blank. Now, follow my logic on this here, because when you look at this, and I'll get you closer. When you look at this, and this is not from the film, this is the NASA rendering, and I actually kind of I like it better. And so I'm going to be doing some of my own mods to it just to give it a little more drama. But you'll notice all of the plating on this. There's a lot of plating, a lot of detail, and that is sadly missing from this kit. And so I thought, well, while I'm here and I'm kind of playing around with it, I thought it might be fun to just go ahead and add some of my own kind of design stuff to it. Example would be, even on the film model, now I don't know, I'm assuming it's just CGI, but there's a lot of panel lines that are missing from this kit. Now, some of them can be scribed, and some of them I can put back with some 010 card. I use this card for diffusion, and it's nice and thin. It's thin enough that it can wrap around things, but it'll add some plating and some pieces, and I think that'll add some texture and interest to it. So I'm working on that. So that's going quite well. I've got a little bit of epoxy sculpt I've got to get out here. If I show you this right here, you'll notice that I have got this big gappage. So I'm just going to be pulling together a little bit of epoxy putty. The other thing was the top of this was not flat. It wasn't flush. It was very uneven. So what I've done is I have cut myself a piece of card that looks to be, if I'm a guessing man, it looks to be 2 mil. And what I'm doing is I'm going to use that to put on top like such. And then I'm going to be able to put the command module on top of that, and then I'm going to what that's going to do is allow me to add, first of all, get a little more height out of it, but it's also going to allow me a very flush surface to work with, and then I can hide this skirt with a little bit of thin card, and that should look really good. The other thing you'll notice here is I had some spare photo etch, and I have used it to give myself a little bit of detail around the portholes. There are 2 doors. There's one here and there's one on the other side. I've cut those through because I'm going to put plastic card behind those just to give it some credibility. I've also cleaned these out, and they're going to be windows as well. And I'll put some plastic card behind that. That should look pretty good. And then I've just added some detail parts to the top here, and I'm going to add a few more pieces of card just to give this a little more drama, because I found it woefully thin on detail. And even though I said earlier that there's a lot of detail, and there is, I've still got a little bit of work to do in terms of cleaning all of this out, and I may even put a little bit of copper pipe in here. I don't know. Don't want to go too crazy, but by the same token, I also want it to look good. Now, curiously, there's there are some fit issues that I'm going to have to work with, and I wanted to show you those. There's one. I did everything I could to get these to sit, and I couldn't do it. So I'm going to have to be going around here with some epoxy sculpt before I can prime this and clean all of that up. And it shouldn't be too much of a problem, but that's what I'm going to do next. And then it should be okay to prime this. But I just want to make sure that I've got all of that nice and flush before I move forward. So I think that's going to do it for this episode. It's pretty long, and so what I'm going to continue to do is I'm going to continue to sort of get all of this tightened up. I have disassembled the lower section here that this sits on. That's going to sit kind of like that, and so that's what that will look like, and then the feet will be on top of that. And curiously, let's see here what's going on. Something's going on here in terms of why that's not sitting. Hang on. Just want to look at something here. Just want to see. Oh, I see. It was just. Yeah. Okay, so the bottom of this isn't flashy. All right, so I've got some work to do, but we'll get it there. But I can see how this is all starting to come together. It's pretty cool. There are these pins here. Oh, I see now. I've just figured it out. How sad am I? So there are these little capture pins here, right there, and they're going to attach to these pieces right here, and you'll notice that I have two very warped ones right here, so I'm just going to go ahead and trim those, and that should be okay. But you know, that's just one of the things with this kit. It's not a crisp kit, and what I realized was, of course, is because I'm pretty sure it was a 3D print that then they used as a mold to cast all of this. A lot of the locator pins were just all resin had just poured into it, and they've collapsed. So cleaning those out has been a bit of a chore, but we'll get there, and everything should fit together quite nicely. But once this is completely primed, it should look pretty good. I'm going to try desperately to have that be kind of the button on this episode. I'm going to see how much more I can do today, because once again, I'm traveling, you see, and it makes it really difficult for me to get shows out when I'm traveling. So not that that's your that's your problem, it's my problem. But anyway, that's what I struggle with. Anyway, I thought it was important that we add this moment to the build, because if you're going to tackle this, you're going to be right where I am anyway. Okay, so let's plow on. Okay, I think this is where we're going to leave it. From the last segment to this segment has been several hours of puttying and patching and doing some things. I've got a coat of primer on the command module capsule. The fuel tank system I'm playing around with, and I've got a coat of primer on the primary engine base that this takes off from. Obviously, it's minus its legs at the moment, because all of that I've disassembled, and I have a coat of primer on that, and that's drying. So a couple of things I've been doing is I've been adding some details to this thing, and I think, you know, I'm really happy with the a couple of the things. This is some photo etch I've put in here around the window. I really like that. The windows themselves I've cut out and they're going to get glass in. I think when this is black and that's glassed, it's really going to pop. I'm going to add to these units here, I'm going to drill these out and I'm going to add some small tubing to this, or maybe not, but definitely clean them up and drill them out so that, and then we'll put some thruster burn markings on that. We'll have fun with that when we do washes and stuff like this. I've been adding some card. Now, none of this has been sanded down, and it's just sort of just on there at the moment. It's all got to be sanded and cleaned up. But I've added a whole bunch of this. Now, the reason why I did that, let me take this down for a second and separate this just so that you can see. The reason why I've done that is because I had some really bad gaps and some broken ends to this. But once this is all cleaned up and blended in, this will look fine. And I kind of like the detail on it. And then I've got a little bit of patching to do. I've put some epoxy sculpt into the worst offender areas up here. That's drying, which is why this didn't get primer on it. But everything is together, and it's looking really good. I added a piece of 2mm card to the top. That allowed me to get this this flat surface. So now when I tip this and I show you, you can see that that's perfectly flush. So that's really good. And then it won't be this, it'll be a smaller piece, but you'll get the idea from this card. If I tip this over and I add this here, you can see it's gonna be a much thinner. It'll be half this. It'll probably be about 2mm 010, but this card will really clean up the skirt and that'll look really pretty. So everything is going together quite well. Now this is obviously a first primer. It's just to see if I've got any rough edges and things like that, and I do. So I've definitely got some cleaning up to do, but that's why you put a coat of primer on it anyway. Some panel lines here that worked. I want to add some more panel lines to this. If you look at this. This is the NASA version of the ship. You can see where the card makes a lot of sense. It's got some really nice edges to it that the filming model doesn't have. Plenty of places for decals, plenty of places to clean it up, but you can also see the glass in there. Now, one of the glass is opaque, or two are opaque, and one has a window. So that might be fun for contrast, is to paint two of them white opaque and have one of them clear. That could be a lot of fun. And I think, again, add even more interest to this model. So before I sign off, definitely some real challenges here with fit. Not very clean. It can be a little frustrating. So if you're new to resin, this kit is harder than I imagined it would be. It's not a lot of pieces, but it doesn't fit very well, and so you're spending hours and hours trying to get it to fit. And you know, the argument is, yeah, that's part of modeling. That's true, but it also sometimes can make the model look a little, if it's not nice and crisp and clean in terms of aesthetic. But we'll get it there. And I think it's going to be fun once it's all painted and washed out and decals are on it. It's going to be a really, I think it's going to be a really excellent example of what we could do if we try to go to Mars. I love stuff like this. I'm a big sci-fi geek. I'm a big real science geek, and I also, more importantly, love spaceships. I just love them. So this is going to turn out really well. Lots of stuff, lots more to do to this, but it's going to come out really well. I think at the end of the day, I'm going to paint this in my good old famous Insignia white. We'll hit it with a coat of black, you know, not the whole thing, but we'll pre-shade it with our black, and then we'll hit it with our Insignia as our base coat, because I just love it. It's a very, very light gray. It's got white in it, and then we can hit it with whites after that. But it works really well on spaceships. It's a great color. That's now, Tamiya has one and Vallejo has one. So either way, I think you're good to go. So there you go. I think we're going to leave it there for part 1 of Build the MAV from the motion picture The Martian, starring Matt Damon. Great fun. And so when we come back for episode 2, we're gonna have cleaned this all up. Got all of our detailed greeblies on it, and then we'll be painting and doing washes and decals, and then final reveal in the second episode. So anyway, thanks for coming on this journey with me. If you like the content, please like and subscribe. It really means an awful lot to me. And as always, guys, everyone out there, I wish you all, please be well, be safe, build something, and I'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.